Hello and welcome to Everybody Has a Story with Jeff Seltzer. I am your host, Jeff Seltzer. Firstly, I hope everybody had an awesome holiday weekend if you celebrated. Here in the United States, we celebrated Thanksgiving last week, so a lot of people had a longer weekend. I personally was off both Thursday and Friday, definitely made the most of my time off. Thursday, had some family over, which was nice to see. Hosted, had a good time. Actually, going back even before that, Wednesday night, my family and myself, so my daughters, my wife, and myself went to the movies. We saw Moana 2. Little teaser here. Next week will be a best of movies 2024 with my buddy John Germain. I'll tell you all of my thoughts about that movie next week. Beyond that, on Friday, got up early with my older daughter Robin to go to Target because she's a Swiftie, and I like Taylor Swift as well. And they had some exclusive vinyls and CDs and books for sale at Target. So the last couple of years, we've gone to like record store Black Friday and all sorts of stuff. This year, you have to go to Target to get the exclusive Taylor Swift stuff. So that's what we did. We were at Target, I believe, about 3:30, 3:40 in the morning. We were fifth in line. Had no issues getting what we needed. Also picked up some stuff for my sister as well as for some other people that I know online. Always happy to help out wherever I can. Not looking to make any money off of it. So definitely, paying it forward and trying to, build up that karma wherever possible. Saturday, went to the movies. Three of us went. We saw Wicked. Again, we'll talk more about that next week with John on the Best of Movies podcast. And then I'm recording this on Sunday today, so December 1st. So this will drop on Monday, December 2nd. But on Sunday, December 1st today, later this afternoon, I'm going to the local holiday parade, which will be a lot of fun, I'm sure. Watching my daughter, who's in the Color Guard marching band, perform the award-winning marching bands. I keep getting reminded as they've done really, really great stuff this season. So that was this weekend. With that said, I did want to, as always, thank everybody for listening. Welcome everybody to the podcast that are return listeners. So if you've listened before or watched before, thank you so much. Obviously, very, very much appreciate you coming back and listening. If this is your first time listening, fantastic. I'm glad that you found us. Definitely shoot me a message on Instagram at Everybody Has a Story Pod. Let me know how you found the podcast. Let me know what you think of the podcast, if you have any thoughts on it. Or if you want to be a future guest, send me a note, send me a direct message on Instagram. It's probably the best way to get a hold of me. Additionally, outside of Instagram, we are on YouTube at Everybody Has a Story Pod. We're available on pretty much all podcast platforms. So Apple, Spotify, Amazon, iHeartRadio, Good Pods, Pandora, Amazon, if I didn't say that already. Pretty much everywhere you can find something, that's where we are. Video is on YouTube and Spotify, audio on those two locations, and everywhere else as well. My personal Instagram is at Seltzer77. And for all things Jeff Seltzer, you can find me over at jeffseltzer.com. With that said, this is episode 21. Really excited that we've made it through 21 episodes. Have a few more episodes coming up this year. Might take a break later this year into early next year, just a couple of weeks. Just a slight hiatus, take some time for the holidays, then come back with the bang sometime in January. So that might break my streak of continuous weeks. But as of now, this is the longest reigning seltzer podcast as far as I know, unless there's some seltzer beverage podcasts out there that have gone for more than 21 episodes. But I'd say in the seltzer family, I guess I can call myself, this is the longest running one, as I don't believe anyone else in my family or anybody else named Seltzer has ever done a podcast. So I just keep adding to that record every single week. So this week, as you probably saw in the title for the podcast, the idea is random jobs and such. So at this point in my life, I am 47 years old. I've been in corporate America for 25 years. I've done a lot of different jobs, specifically, even after college, in terms of, picking up my skill set, learning different things, working with different people, stuff like that. But what I think most people can probably relate to are random jobs earlier in life. So, early in life, you're getting an allowance. Years ago, I got $1, $2 a week allowance. Obviously, not enough money to sustain what I was looking to do between buying baseball cards, comic books, movies with friends, slice of pizza, things like that. So that led me to doing lots of different random jobs in the neighborhood or things like that. So I wanted to kind of walk through a list of some jobs that I've held, some random stories, some people that I've met, things like that along the way. What I will say is I did reach out to a few people a few months ago that I worked with years ago. None of them had any interest in revisiting or reliving the past. So I'm flying solo on this one, which is totally fine. What I will say also is most of these jobs were 25, 30 plus years ago. I started working back in, I want to say, 1991, 1992, give or take. So some of the facts could be a little fuzzy. As I often joke, don't let the facts get in the way of a good story. So I will say that most of these stories are as accurate or as true as I remember them to be. But we oftentimes fantasize or exaggerate stories. So we'll try to be as honest and truthful as possible with these. So with that said, first job that I remember, I think I was probably either 12, 13, or 14 years old, maybe 12 or 13. There was a baseball card store that was open in my town. I don't remember what the name of the store was, but it was probably about a half mile or mile walk from where I lived in Edison, New Jersey. It was on Route 27. The only stores that I'd ever been to at that point was that one. There was one in Highland Park, I believe, called JKJ Baseball Cards. Not sure if they're still there. Then there was also one that was in Metuchen. So between Edison, Metuchen, and Highland Park, there were the three. Being that I was, super young, this was the only one that I could probably most sustainably walk to every time I had to go to work. So I was probably, again, 12, 13, 14 years old, whatever, walked over there, asked them if they were hiring. They kind of gave me a weird look of what I remember. I mean, again, I probably made that up because it's been a long time. Who remembers what they looked like or all that kind of stuff at that point? But it is what it is. And somehow I ended up with a job making, I think, $2 an hour, which for the record, I believe minimum wage was $5.05 an hour. So as you would assume, this was an under the table job that they just paid me cash, which then I pay taxes on because my dad did work for the IRS at the time. So I had to make sure that I was in the up and up with everything. So that was that. I remember I worked there on a Saturday and a Sunday. So it was one weekend I went in. I think I worked like 7 or 8 hours each day sorting baseball cards. So legitimately, I sat down. They gave me those boxes and cases of baseball cards, the old like Topps and Donruss and Fleer, from the wax packs they had back in the 90s. And I was sorting them either by number or by player or something. I'm sure I wasn't great. I'm sure I wasn't fast, but this is what I did. And when you pay a kid $2 an hour, what do you expect? What I will say is my memories from the job were, so I did that on a Saturday and a Sunday. During those 2 days, I don't remember too many, if any, customers walking in. Thinking back from a P&L perspective of how a company can stay in business or be sustainable, obviously they've got rent, they've got overhead like employees, although this employee got paid $16 for a full day. So it's not like I was making a lot there. Additionally, inventory, electricity, all that kind of stuff. So unless they had other deals they were working on or selling at card shows, whatever else like that, since they didn't have an internet business at the time because that wasn't really a thing at the time, I should have seen the writing on the wall that maybe this wasn't going to last very long. What I will say is I worked Saturday, I worked Sunday. They had MTV blasting on the TV the entire time. So I remember seeing a lot of music videos, House of Pain Jump Around. I remember seeing Two Live Crew, which, was probably a little adult for a store, I guess you can say, to be playing, but nobody was in there besides me and probably the owner. So who really cares at that point? Worked Saturday, worked Sunday. I remember, I don't know how they communicated to me or whatever, but after Sunday, somehow I was told that my services would no longer be needed there. So I made a cool $32, I believe, for the 2 days work. And within a month, the store was out of business. So that didn't work out well for them. I made, what did I say, about $32 over the course of 2 days, which at the time I was probably making $1 or $2 allowance. So that was a huge step up. I could probably almost buy the new Madden video game for whatever video game system I was playing at the time. So that was an interesting one. I mean, it was a great way to get my feet wet and kind of, make some money as a baseball card sorter. Another one that I did was I delivered newspapers, I think for a short amount of time. One of my neighbors, so my buddy John, not John Germain, but John Butzko, who I grew up with, then moved down to Florida. I think his sister was a delivery person for the News Tribune or the Home News or one of those newspapers that delivered in Central Jersey. I think she either was going somewhere or didn't want to do it anymore, so somehow I acquired it. I did it for a few weeks. I believe, I don't know how much money I made on that. I definitely made probably some tips, but maybe not. It was very short-lived. I don't remember much about how that ended or even really how it started, but that did happen. So I guess job number 2 was I delivered newspapers. My next job that I had, which was probably one of the more memorable earlier jobs for me, was I worked for Burger King. I was talking to my buddy John, my buddy Rich a few days ago, and I think I was mentioning how I was getting a Whopper and fries or something like that. And they're like, yeah, I guess, your job when you were 15 years old definitely rubbed off on you. And the fact that, all these years later, you're still eating Burger King. I'm like, yeah, I guess so. I mean, I don't know what it is, but something about a Whopper always just gets me. It's always been one of my favorite, I guess, guilty pleasure meals to have. going back to one of my earlier podcasts, I ended up working at Burger King, and then my next job, which I'll get into, is Sizzler. I started putting more focus into working because at that point I decided that my short-lived tennis, track, and cross-country careers were not going to get me anywhere and were not going to be productive. Again, just to really quickly summarize, I did not make the tennis team. Track, I did not do much of note there. And cross-country, I was the second best Jeff Seltzer in the county. So it's not even like I was, making a mark in sports. So I turned to a job where I figured I could make some money. Additionally, it'll give me some life experiences and give me something that I can put onto my college, applications in terms of stuff that I did. So Sizzler was a pretty cool job. Actually, let me get back to Burger King for a second. So Burger King was interesting. I worked there for about 6 months, making $5.05 an hour, which was minimum wage at the time. I was working weekends, but we were being used as a training store as they were about to open another store somewhere else. So my hours were not very substantial. Like they'd call me in for like 6 hours on a Saturday, 6 on a Sunday, but then after like 2 or 3 hours would send me home. I remember there was once or twice I came home probably crying to my family because I was just upset, right? Like I'd woken up early, I'd gotten there, I was ready to make all this money. And then I ended up getting sent home early, which I recognized meant I was not going to make, quote, all of this money. Disappointing. I ended up spending most of my time there cleaning the parking lot, cleaning the dining room. I spent some time, cooking the food or register, but again, I didn't really spend that significant amount of time doing anything that big, I guess you can say. Definitely was a weird job. I mean, my biggest memory, I guess I have, is when I overflowed the coffee machine, which probably wasn't a good look and might have led to some shorter hours as well. It was like an old school coffee machine with the filter and you pour the beans in and such. I think I hit the hot water button probably 1 or 2 or maybe 4 too many times. And the coffee machine was between the 2 soda machines, and then the coffee machine overflowed, and that was a mess. I do remember cleaning that up as well. So that was quite the party. I believe that was in summer of '93. I remember summer of '93. I went away on vacation for like 2 or 3 weeks, which I obviously told them about ahead of time. Like, hey, I'm gonna be gone for 3 weeks. Blah blah blah. I came back. There was new management, and the new management did not put me on the schedule and had no record of me. So I guess either I quit or I was fired or something happened. But either way, my services were no longer needed at Burger King. Later that year, I turned 16, which, as you may or may not know, you can get working papers in the state of New Jersey, or at least back in the 90s, you could, at the age of 14, but there were a lot of restrictions. And when you turn 16, there's a lot more that you could do in terms of working number of hours in a day, consecutive hours, how late you can work, stuff like that. So in January of '94, as soon as, or not long after cross country was over, when I officially retired as a JV athlete from high school, I got a job at Sizzler, which I would say, looking back, was probably one of my favorite jobs that I've ever had. So working at Sizzler, I came in. I initially got hired as a salad bar attendant. So for those of you who don't know who at Sizzler is, actually what Sizzler was, because they've since filed bankruptcy. Sizzler was, let's say, a step below Red Lobster, but it was great for its time. So you could get a meal. So they had like fish, they had steak, they had chicken, they had sandwiches, but they also had a salad bar that you could make a full meal out of. So the salad bar had like tacos, it had corn fritters, it had ice cream, it had salad, that's the name, all sorts of stuff. And it varied week by week what was on the salad bar. And I remember you could get like a hamburger, salad bar, and a soda for like under $10. Like I remember the hack at one point was it was cheaper to get the hamburger with the add-on salad bar than to just get the salad bar, which was weird, right? Because you would think that the add-on should cost more. Maybe that was their idea. I don't know. I'm not even trying to understand what they did. I mean, they didn't last much longer beyond when I was there at that point. So whatever it was, it wasn't working, I guess. But like at the time, it was cheaper to get the salad bar with the hamburger than just the salad bar. I remember I started at the salad bar attendant, then I was eventually a cashier. I waited tables. I worked in the dish room. I tried to make sure that any job that I could get, I could do, or I would do. This way I could get as many hours as possible. So if anybody called out or anybody wasn't available, or if they needed to fill a spot, like I was there. My goal was to get as many hours as I could and to make as much money as I could. So much so that I remember one summer, the line cook, I think, took off a week for vacation in the summer, and they had me cooking lunch during the summer, which in hindsight was not a good idea. I was 16 or 17 years old. To this day, 30 plus years later, I'm still not a very good cook. I was an awful cook back then. I can't tell you how many steaks or chickens were sent back because they weren't cooked enough, cooked too much, or whatever it was. Like it was just a mess. I assume at some point the manager stepped in. I don't remember. I do remember at one point when my neighbors came in for lunch and looked back and saw me as the cook. I would love to know what that neighbor was thinking at the time, where little Jeff from next door is cooking, which is crazy. I don't know, kind of is what it is. Eventually at Sizzler, we also started doing a Sunday brunch, which was really cool. My memories from that was we went to another store, we trained, came back. I was super excited because at this point I was probably making like $5.50 or $6 an hour. But for Sunday brunch, they paid me, I want to say it was like $8 or $10 an hour, which, in 94 was pretty good. Plus I got tips. So at that point, I was probably clearing maybe $12, $14 an hour, which again, coming off of a $5 a week allowance, something like that was just amazing. It was mind blowing, right? I could start spending more money. I could buy things, I could save things and whatever it was like that. So I got a lot of different life experiences, which was cool. I learned what I liked, what I didn't like, things like that. Additionally, I was there for about 2.5 years. Really cool aspect of working there was I was the first of like my neighborhood or my friend group to get a job of some kind. So I turned 16, got a job there. And as a lot of my other friends turned 16, I got a lot of other people jobs there as well. So my buddy Brooks, who lived down the street, who I, for the record, tried to get to come on for this podcast. He had no interest in talking about our time at Sizzler. He got a job there. I got my buddy Phil, one of my buddies, Phil, a job there. Matt, who lived around the corner, he got a job there. There's so many people that I grew up with that got jobs there, which was really cool. It wasn't just a work. It was, I had fun while I was there. I mean, I'd say for myself from a maturity perspective or growing up, I definitely did a lot there as well. In the fact that a lot of the employees there, specifically the waiters, were Rutgers college students because Rutgers was not that far from Edison. So met a lot of people that way. Saw different personalities, kind of evolved my own personality, which, again, still evolving now and still trying to figure myself out in life. But if nothing else, it was my first time kind of getting out of my shell and being a different environment, which was really, really cool. Not long before I left Sizzler, which I'll talk about in a second, I decided I wanted to get a second job because the summer was going to happen and it was going to be the summer after my freshman year of college. So I got a job at CVS as my neighbor, John Hoffman, was a district manager for CVS. So he got me a job over at the Menlo Park Mall CVS. Not long after I got that second job, Sizzler filed bankruptcy, which I think I talked about a while back. To this day, I believe the only Sizzlers that are still around are probably the one in Tokyo, Japan, which I saw back in June, July. There might be one in California still, I think. Shout out to Mike Kinnick, who looked at it recently, I believe. And I think that's it. There was one in Orlando up till recently. That one shut down. There was even one in my town here of Rockaway, New Jersey, when I moved in here, which that shut down and eventually became Buffalo Wild Wings. I think it was because 2/3 of the stores are corporately owned. Those shut down. The 1/3 that were not corporately owned were the ones that hung around. But, here we are 25 or whatever years later. And I don't believe there are more than a handful of Sizzlers left in the world. Worked at CVS, which shout out to Daniel Ireland. He's always mentioning that I mentioned that I worked at CVS, which is fact. I was at CVS when 3.5 years on and off. I say on and off because you'll see in a second all the different types of jobs and experiences that I had. Taking a step back, actually, and looking at that, I've recorded now for 18 minutes, and I've probably just given you my high school and early college job resume. I'm not sure how this is going to turn out. Hopefully, somebody's interested in this. If not, at least listen to a minute and a half so I get credit for the stream. Otherwise, next week's going to be an amazing episode. So if this episode does nothing for you, my apologies. They can't all be winners. You need bad ones to appreciate the good ones, or what I've been told. I think I saw a quote from Indy Hartwell, which I think she stole from somebody else recently, that said, don't be upset that it's done. Be happy that it happened. Not sure it's even relevant to this at all, but let's see if anyone's paying attention still. Let me know. Anyway, with that said, was working at CVS, did that for a while, did overnight shifts, which you haven't lived till you've worked an overnight shift for $5.05 an hour. That was nuts. I eventually left CVS because they wouldn't give me more money for doing the overnight shift. Working during the afternoon paid the same amount as working 3 a.m, which I thought was nonsense. So I thought I would show them and go work at Sam Goody Music Store for $5.25 an hour, which is what I asked for on the application, only to find out my first paycheck that I was only getting paid $5.05 an hour as well. So I didn't get the $5.25 an hour raise that I thought I was getting. Definitely taught me years later to definitely verbally communicate and get an agreement on whatever you think you're getting, as opposed to assuming it based on what you put on a piece of paper. So that was definitely a good life lesson there. Worked at Sam Goody for about a year. couple notable stories there. Number one, I started working at 5.05 an hour, which was minimum wage still at the time. It's crazy. I mean, in New Jersey now it's 15, which I still think is low, but 5.05 an hour 30 years ago, it didn't really cover much after you cover taxes and stuff like that. Story with that is making 5.05 an hour. After working there 6 months, I got a raise to 5.25 an hour. I think it was. They said you did a great job. Here's another 20 cents an hour. I was like, that's fantastic. Thank you. About 2 weeks later, minimum wage got raised to 5.20 an hour. I said, okay, great. So do I get an extra, 15 or 20 cents beyond that because I did such a great job? And now I am only making 5 cents more than minimum wage. They said, absolutely not. You got your raise. We'll talk again in 6 months or a year. So again, another life lesson that you got to speak out for yourself, take care of yourself, because if you don't, the man will take advantage of you in this specific situation. What else? Another interesting story. So I guess I was either 18 or 19 years old at the time. I was working. It was during holiday season, so probably right around this time of the year. Not sure if you guys remember or any of you are old enough, but CDs used to have like this case over them. So that way, if in theory you tried to steal it, it would set off an alarm. I think Best Buy still has them with like tags, Walmart, Target, etc. Target maybe not so much, but I think Walmart and Best Buy do. So I was working the register. Somebody set off the alarm. I look over. He had like a bag just full of like probably dozens of CDs. So what should I have done? I should have stood there, yelled at the guy to, don't steal, maybe call my manager or whatever. But what did I actually do? This guy dropped the bag. He ran into the parking lot. He ran into the mall. I chased him around the mall. So at 19 years old, I'm wearing my dress shoes. I'm wearing, slacks, a shirt, whatever else like that. Running around the mall, yelling, "That guy's a thief. Somebody call the police." Was not really the reaction I was looking for from people around me. I don't think anybody even really looked over. Very curious how I would have reacted if I saw this happen. Remember, this is also before cell phones were prevalent, so it's not like anybody was really going to whip out their phone and call the police. But I remember I chased this person through the entire mall, chased this person into the parking lot. I think I cornered the person. They looked down like they were going to jump over the edge of the parking deck. And again, this is just stupid. Like, this person could have had like a gun. This person could have had a weapon. This person could have more persons, I guess, right? So anything could have happened. But again, the adrenaline got into me, and I thought I was doing the right thing here. Eventually, this person decided not to jump off the parking deck. This person ran a different direction. I lost them. I went back to my store, and I got yelled at by my manager for doing this. So again, I guess the lesson here is, even though I was making that much money, I did definitely have the passion to try to make sure people do the right thing. But when I did what I thought was the right thing, which probably wasn't the right thing, I just got reprimanded for it. So always, think about, or in my case, overthink about what you're doing, because maybe it makes sense, maybe it doesn't, and try to figure out what your end goal is. Last call out from Sam Goody, or actually a couple of them. So at the time in the late 90s, CDs were $16.99, and then with tax, it was $18.01, which still blows me away thinking about it today in 2024. And the fact that for an Apple Music family plan, I pay $15 per month, which is about 100 million songs, and I can listen to it anywhere I want, any device I want. My family can listen, stuff like that. But back then, for $19 or $18, basically, you had one CD, which maybe had 3 songs you liked, and that was pretty much it. So I've always joked with people that I was born probably about 30 years too early, because this is where I could have definitely made my money or saved a lot of money. Because in hindsight, most of my paychecks probably went to buying all of these CDs. Even like buying a single CD was like $6 or $7. So you're paying $6 for one song, versus nowadays, again, you get 100 million plus songs for like not much at all. So that was pretty great. Other thing that I remember too was I'd met a friend of mine who I'm still friends with today, named Lori, and her sister Jen, who ended up becoming 2 of my best wrestling buddies that I've gone to dozens of wrestling shows over the years, traveling to. When I used to go to ECW Wrestling in Philly at the ECW Arena, I used to go to the shows with them. I used to go to a lot of events with their mom as well. Multiple times in the 90s, I sat first row center for Monday Night Raw. I was there with Jen, Lori, and their mom, Tracy. Rest in peace, Tracy. So definitely, I mean, if nothing else at that point, I made some money, probably spent way too much money, but definitely made some great memories and made some lifelong friends, which is always fun as well. Last 2 jobs to call out here as well. Dorm security. So I was reminded about this recently when I went on a college visit with my daughters and my wife a few weeks ago, that most of the dorms, if you want to go in as a guest after either 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock, you have to show some kind of ID or your key or whatever else like that. And if you don't live in that dorm, you had to sign in. So I was that person who would then sign people in. So I remember I believe 2 times a week I would work. So sophomore year of college, 2 times a week I worked at Tinsley, the dorm, which was my freshman dorm. Sat there, signed people in. I mean, it was pretty much like a nothing job. I think it paid like $8 an hour, which again was well ahead of minimum wage at the time, which was nice. So I think it was like 4 hour shifts, so it was $32 per night. Um, I was able to do homework. I had my little boombox there, so listen to music while doing it as well. Definitely saw a lot of drunk folks walking around. Met a few people this way. It was fine. I did it for a year, and that was pretty much it. Made some money, kept me busy, and that was that. It probably kept me out of trouble as well. I think it was Tuesday and Thursday nights, which was good because Thursday nights were a bit of a party night at Rutgers, and I probably would have done, I don't know, gone out or whatever. Versus this, I would work from 8 to 12 or 9 to 1 or whatever it was. And then I assume go back to sleep when I got back to my dorm, but I mean, maybe not. I don't remember. It's been a long time. Lastly, a job that I did junior year of college, which was super interesting but super different, was I was a substitute teacher. So I'm sure a lot of people remember when they were growing up, going to school. Oftentimes you'd have a substitute teacher and you're like, hey, who is this fool? What's going on? So in many cases, I was that fool. The only requirements to become a substitute teacher was you needed 60 credits from a undergraduate university. So I had 60 credits at the end of my sophomore year of college. So I was like, hey, that sounds great. I think I made, I want to say it was like $60 or $70 per day, which wasn't bad. And I did it in the school district that I grew up in, which was Edison, New Jersey, which had its pros and its cons. I mean, the pros were Edison was fairly close to where I was in New Brunswick at Rutgers. As familiar with where most of the schools were, because unlike today, you couldn't just GPS it. Like MapQuest was maybe a thing, but you couldn't just open your phone and say, okay, where is Edison High School or whatever else like that. So you kind of had to do some research or have an idea. Also, I was familiar with a lot of the teachers too, as I ended up teaching in, I think, definitely middle school and high school. I don't remember if I did elementary school. I think I might have done elementary. And a lot of the teachers that I had specifically in high school and middle school were still there when I substitute taught. So those were the upsides. Now, the downsides. So because the cutoff date we had in Edison, which was December 31st, I started probably a year before most people would have from an age perspective, because my birthday is the end of September. So I started college when I was 17, which means that I think when I was eligible to substitute teach, I was still only, I think, 19. And for those of you that have ever seen pictures of me when I was younger, I really, really had a baby face. I've definitely aged a few in the last few years, specifically, since having kids and just, my late 40s. So it's going to happen at some point. But I would go into, I remember some schools, because we'd have to go in like a half hour or an hour early to get our information, to get lesson plans, whatever else like that. And there were a number of times where teachers or security guards would ask me what I'm doing there, thinking that I was a student. I think the most humbling one was probably middle school, which means, middle schools were like age 10 to 12 or 13, maybe 14. And there was a teacher there who was convinced that I had no right being there, which, I probably didn't have any right being there. It looked very, very weird. But again, I had my paperwork. I was old enough. I had certifications, whatever else like that. So that was definitely a very interesting experience. Weirdest experience, I would say, was when I went and substitute taught in the high school. I think I subbed for my sister's homeroom once. So my sister's homeroom, as well as our friend Raylan, her class. Being that at that point, right, I had just, I was a junior in college. So my sister and a lot of her friends, and some people even I still knew, whatever, were, I guess, seniors in high school. So there were a lot of people there that I was still familiar with, that I still kind of knew. So that was definitely weird, teaching for people that I knew from outside of school. Yeah, so that was that. All in, that was my last, I guess, in terms of the list of jobs that I've had. Again, I was still at CVS working while I was doing a lot of these other odd jobs. But then once I graduated college, I got a job at IRI, Information Resources Incorporated, now known as Circana. And then I kind of moved on from there and went to other types of jobs. So that was pretty much that. Again, like I said, left CVS at that point. I took a month off and then started off in my corporate life, which I've been living and experienced ever since. A few weeks ago, I had reached out to many of the followers on Instagram to say, hey, I'm going to talk about some random jobs. Do you have any random jobs that you want to talk about? So here were a few. And I believe they were all okay with their names being listed. They didn't ask for it not to be, so I will list them out here. So friend of the show, Gabby Reese, said that at one point in her life, she was a Disney princess for kids' birthday parties. Sounds like a fun job. I'm not sure how trademark legal that would have been. but they're everywhere. It kind of is what it is. You experience it. It's fun. The kids don't really mind it, I guess, unless the Disney IP police come after you. So I'm sure we're all probably safe at this point, but just a friendly reminder about that kind of stuff. John Cevallos, who we had on the show a number of weeks ago, he once worked for a tire distributor, unloading containers of tires and delivering tire orders to shops and dealerships across northern New Jersey. That sounds like a lot of manual labor. I would compare that probably to when I worked the overnight shifts at CVS unloading the truck. A lot of work, probably not a lot of pay for it. Definitely a life experience that teaches you a lot of things. Wife of the show, Beth Seltzer, she one point delivered a free local newspaper called The Suburban. She was supposed to ask people if they wanted to pay for it or to give her a tip. If not, she would get $8 per month from the company to deliver it. So well below minimum wage, I'm sure, but she probably made some money off of that, which was really, really great. Couple of things I wanted to get to before calling it a week. And like I said before, the next few weeks, we're going to have some action-packed episodes. Next week is going to be a best of, probably worst of as well, movies 2024 with John Germain. The following week, someone I used to work with, my buddy Scott Teresi, is going to be on the show talking about entrepreneurship and some of his businesses that he has held, that he has sold, just kind of like the life cycle of what he's done. And then probably at some point, I'm going to do a best of 2024, the podcast, which will be a very non-traditional best of. So it's not going to just be clips. Probably won't be any clips because I don't really want to edit them together. It'll be largely me looking at the top 10 list of the most streamed episodes and giving my thoughts on each of them. So in terms of how I put the episode together, how I got the guest, thoughts on the guest, stories, anything like that. So I'm not really sure what that's going to look like yet. Still working on it, but it's coming together. And that'll probably be, I don't know, right before Christmas, I guess. And then, again, like I said, take a few weeks off and then come back after the new year. With that said, since it is 2024, before we get into a few best of weeks, did want to talk about how 2024 is an interesting year from anniversary years. So first of all, as I mentioned a few weeks ago, probably a few months ago, 2024 is my 20th wedding anniversary. So Beth and I got married October 10th, 2004. It was an amazing day, lots of fun down in good old Woodbridge, New Jersey. So this year it was 20 years on that. Additionally, this is the 20th anniversary for the movie Saw, which I took Robin to go see the 20th anniversary re-release in theaters a few months ago. 20th anniversary for American Idiot from Green Day. Went with my buddy Chad to go see Green Day in concert back in August, where they celebrated the 20th anniversary of American Idiot, as well as the 30th anniversary of Dookie, Green Day's, I would say, probably biggest and my favorite album they've ever put out. So that's 30 years. Additionally, the movie Clerks, a movie that's near and dear to my heart, one of my favorite movies of all time. Super, it just meant a lot to me in terms of my experiences. Again, growing up, learning things, stuff like that. I saw it in theaters, I believe it was 1994 when it came out. So Clerks is also experiencing its 30th anniversary. So that is really cool. I did have a few more things I wanted to talk about, but I think at this point, I'm probably good for the week. So as always, if anybody has any questions or wants to shout out or whatever, definitely shoot me a note on Instagram at Everybody Has a Story Pod. I'm trying to use this as a platform to share anything that anybody wants to share, right? So if you have news, if you have anything you want to get out there, if you want to take a stand on or against something within reason, reach out to me. Let's see if we could set something up, put it up here, and kind of go with it. Let's see what else. As a reminder, you can find me at Seltzer77 on Instagram. For all things Jeff Seltzer, you can find me at jeffseltzer.com. The email address for the show is everybodyhasastorypod@gmail.com. We are available, as always, on all podcast platforms. Not sure if there's anything else that I'd like to share or add. I've already shared through a few of the things that people reached out to on this week, so I think I'm good. With that said, I hope everybody has an amazing week, and come back next week. Looking forward to a really, really fun show talking about movies, which, on a side note, I think next week makes sense from a best of movie episode, because with everybody having, or a lot of people having time off at the end of the month, this will give you hopefully an opportunity to make a list of movies you might have missed or might not have heard of this year that you can then, either queue or add to your list or purchase or however you want to consume these movies or whatever in preparation for either sitting at home for the holiday or flying somewhere or whatever it is. So in any event, have an amazing week and we'll talk more soon. Great. Bye.